Before Tennessee Tornado opened to the public in 1999, the ride's manufacturer, Aerodynamics, was on a downtrend. One of their more recent projects of that time was Drachen Fire, a failed looping roller coaster that used to operate at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. Bolliger and Mabillard had broken into the coaster scene and were gobbling up much of the competition. Their looping roller coasters were superior to anything Aero was producing at that time. Their roller coasters had smooth transitions, a wide range of elements, and better ride capacity. Well, Aerodynamics was ready to prove themselves once again and took on another challenging project, this time for Dollywood. After learning from their mistakes with Drachen Fire, Aero was ready to create another masterpiece of twisted metal. Unfortunately, Aerodynamics wasn't able to fully utilize their comeback with Tennessee Tornado, as they went bankrupt a few short years later, but that's a story for another day. Today we talk Tennessee Tornado. Presentation. Tucked in the far back corner of the park, unless you're standing right underneath this roller coaster, you won't notice it. This ride is the definition of a terrain coaster. The lift barely leaves the surface of the earth, but managed to climb 163 feet above the base of the hill. Just like Kennywood, Dollywood takes full advantage of their mountainous surrounding by building roller coasters on top of, alongside, and through the mountains. Speaking of traveling through, Tennessee Tornado's main drop is right through the side of the mountain. It's a great use of a tunnel, because when you exit at the bottom, you're instantly tossed right into a giant 110-foot loop. The rest of the ride is tucked in the trees, making a few of the inversions barely visible from a park pathway. The station queue is well themed, designed to look like a mining shed that has been ravaged by a tornado. It's not an immersive experience, but it's enough to set the stage for this looping steel coaster. To me, the overall theming of the ride is its presentation, the setting of the roller coaster. For me as a videographer-photographer, roller coasters that are like Tennessee Tornado are my kryptonite. I want to capture some of the close shots of various moments of the ride, but unless I trespass, it's practically impossible to get some of those shots that you want. However, what is a photographer's nightmare usually means near-perfect setting for an actual coaster. I love it when a ride takes you on a journey outside of the eyesight from the park. Tennessee Tornado isn't completely secluded, but it has enough moments that will provide you the full effect, thus earning itself a solid 9 score for presentation. Ride intensity. Starting off with a left turn out of the station, Tennessee Tornado takes its time as it travels through the storage shed on its way to the lift. After reaching the top of the lift, which doesn't really feel that tall because you never break free from the tree line, the ride takes a small dive leading right into a 270-degree turn to the right. After rising up into what seems like a small hill, Tennessee Tornado then dives right back down into the side of the mountain. For those who are riding in the back, get ready for some amazing ejector airtime. Before Lightning Rod opened at the park, this was my favorite moment of airtime in all of Dollywood. Once you reach the bottom of the drop, the train exits the tunnel and immediately enters a giant 110-foot loop. This inversion is where Tennessee Tornado flexes all of its muscles by providing strong positive Gs, then weightlessness as you slowly crest the top of the inversion, then followed by more crushing Gs as you exit the inversion. The ride flies up the side of the mountain, performing a near vertical bank turn to the right. In quick succession, Tennessee Tornado enters its final 2 inversions, a vertical loop and a sidewinder inversion, which somewhat looks like an Immelman. The coaster then takes another bank turn to the right, leading us into a quick pop into the brake run. The transition into the brake run is very forceful, providing a quick pop of airtime for those in the front. If you are riding in the back, it honestly feels like a janky transition that might crush your shoulders than provide any enjoyment. The coaster barrels into the brake run with a lot of gas left in the tank. If the coaster is only running with one train, the ride will be slowed down somewhat, but you'll travel into the station at a higher speed. If there are 2 trains in operation, this brake run will hit hard, whipping you forward. Tennessee Tornado delivers a lot of great positive Gs as you'd expect from any Aero looping coaster, just minus the headbanging. The ride earns itself a decent 8.5 score for ride intensity. Fun factor. Not only is Tennessee Tornado an intense coaster, it's a fun one. The ride delivers on many levels, from the presentation, positive G-forces, negative G-forces, and weightlessness. There is plenty here to enjoy. The biggest ding against the ride has to be its runtime. The coaster is barely over 2,600 feet, and with a max speed of 63 miles an hour, you can be sure that the ride will travel through that entire track in record time. Its great pacing makes up for a short runtime, but it would have been nice having a couple more elements before coming to the brake run. Fun factor earns a 9 rating. Originality. Even up until their last few years of operation, Aerodynamics was still pumping out fresh ideas. Tennessee Tornado took their traditional looping roller coaster mold and threw it in the trash. Their cookie-cutter inversions were tweaked to provide a more comfortable ride experience. The layout was original, using the terrain as their guide for what elements to provide next. It's a shame that Aero never got the chance to challenge themselves with more of these custom looping roller coasters. Their next looping coaster, Gold Coaster at Dreamworld, which is in Australia, looks more like an homage to their earlier work. A weird trait, something that you wouldn't notice on any of their other roller coasters, is the way the inversions are shaped. The first inversion is a giant circle, instead of a tear-shaped loop, which is typical with any other vertical loop by this manufacturer. Also, the way the track bends during the inversions is very funky. Near the top of every loop, the track does this wavy bend, not sure why, but I assume it's to smoothen out the transitions. All in all, Tennessee Tornado is a giant bright spot on Aero's rap sheet, earning itself a perfect 10 rating for originality. Ride Smoothness. I haven't ridden X2, but of all their looping roller coasters, Tennessee Tornado is by far their smoothest roller coaster. Heck, it's one of their smoothest roller coasters overall. It's a shame that their restraints are still those awkward over-the-shoulder straps that don't quite fit me. Taller people will understand this struggle. Majority of the transitions on this ride is really smooth, something that you won't hear me say about majority of their Aero looping coasters. The only reason I hold this category back from a perfect score is first, the restraints, and second, that funky transition into the brake run. It may provide some ejector airtime for riders in the front, but at the cost of slamming you into the restraints. The rest of the ride is pretty smooth, earning itself a score of 8.5 for ride smoothness. Okay, the final score comes to 9, which is an excellent score. This is the highest score that I've ever given an Aero roller coaster. Tennessee Tornado is a great roller coaster that delivers on multiple levels. The ride is re-rideable as the front and back roads provide a very different experience. Back rows will give you some good ejector with that dive into the mountain, as the front will allow you to experience the full force of this coaster. Not to mention that painful, crazy transition into the brake run, which is a plus or minus depending on how you want to look at it. My personal score is going to be a 9. As I mentioned already, I haven't been on X2, so for now, this will remain my favorite roller coaster by Aero. As someone who has ridden many Aero looping roller coasters, including some of the biggest like Great American Scream Machine, Viper, Vortex, Loch Ness Monster, Anaconda, and Corkscrew, I gotta say that Tennessee Tornado remains the best of all of these. The only one I haven't ridden is Viper at Six Flags Magic Mountain, but I assume that it's about on par with the Great American Scream Machine. I'm very fond of this looping roller coaster and love snagging multiple rides during any visit to Dollywood. My personal favorite place to ride is in the very back row. I just can't get enough of that drop into the mountain. Well, that's going to wrap up my review of Tennessee Tornado. What do you think of this looping roller coaster by Aerodynamics? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please click on that like button, and as always, make sure you're subscribed. That way you continue to get more great content brought to you by Extreme Thrills.